Hey guys, this is Alex, and welcome to the Two Dudes, Brews, and Reviews podcast. On today's episode, we drink a bit too much Oktoberfest while talking about 2000's The Moon in Antarctica by indie rock band Modest Mouse. If you like what you hear, consider subscribing to the podcast, give us a rating, and maybe even tell your friends about us. With that being said, we hope you enjoy the show.
We're doing your thing. This is yours.
We are doing my thing, but before we get into that, Austin, what are we drinking tonight, man?
Oh yeah. We're drinking Great Lakes Oktoberfest. We are a week away. It will be October by the end of the week, and it's time to be a pumpkin spice bitch, you know.
Well, everybody else will be, but not me and you.
Nah, we already had our thing.
Yeah,
I'll throw up.
Yeah, pumpkin's disgusting. How do you feel about this so far? I don't remember if we've ever drank this on the show.
I've never been super high on Oktoberfest. I've had like Sam Adams before, and I didn't like it. Stuff is a lot more mellow than I remember, though.
That was also at the beginning of like you getting into beer.
Back before I was a pussy. Now I'm a full-blown pussy with my craft beer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I can't help myself. Like, craft beer dudes are hated, but we also hate them because we hate ourselves. And that's the important thing. We're self-deprecating.
Give me a second to wrap my mind around that one.
I don't notice it because my friend group and my circle of people around me are very small. But for the most part, there is a stigma around craft beer guys.
Yeah, there is.
I don't think we have the extra 30 to 40 pounds on our frames that like would be necessarily associated with a guy like that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Well,
I'm getting there.
Well, you're not 30 yet. You'll be 30 soon, and I'm very young. I'm only 23, so
you still have youth.
I have
it's been robbed.
A strong enough. I have a strong enough metabolism right now. It's a good beer though.
It's good. Malty, caramel flavor. I never really know how to describe the flavor of Oktoberfest. It's like a darker flavor, but it's not terribly rich or complex. It goes down easy.
No, this is a good beer. Yeah, man, talk to me. What's your relationship with this band? Because I know they're like in your top 10 for sure.
I guess so, yeah. Modest Mouse is probably one of those entry indie bands for me. I discovered them around 2007 or 8 maybe. My friend Nathan introduced me to them. I think one of the first songs I heard was the opening track from this record. And this was like back before streaming, of course. So I would become interested in a band. I would buy their album. And I had a very limited selection of records to listen to at my house. So I guess if I owned something, I would force myself to get into it. Like you kind of had to give records a little bit more time. And I guess the relationship with them just kind of blossomed from there. I mean, I was into Good News for People Who Love Bad News. I think that actually was the first record that I owned by them. It's just been going strong since then. I'm not as into them as I used to be. There definitely was an obsession because of their newer output, where I think like their last 2 or 3 records like verge on pretty bad. I just don't love them as much as I used to. If they would have broken up in like 2006, I think they would have had like this most consistent, or one of the most consistent indie rock discographies.
Okay.
Now, we haven't like slipped any pieces of information over the last 2 or 3 weeks about this record. It's kind of rare for us not to, give a little bit of something. I'm intrigued to see what you got out of it, if anything.
I listened to the album right after the following few days after the Her podcast. And I got like pretty familiar with it pretty fast. I listened to it like cutting the grass a few times, which isn't like the optimal album listening experience when you've got a little bit of a hum in the background. Like there were a few times where I was like, I can't tell if like there's something fucked up with the mower or like this is part of the song. There was a few times like that, and I think it might have been a little bit of both.
Tiny cities made of ashes, maybe.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, I know of this band. I have listened to Good News. Jesus Christ.
Good News.
Good News for people that love bad news.
Yeah.
God, Jesus. White people, dude, and their titles. And I've listened to that record right there that you've got sitting that to the right. It's got Broke on it.
Oh, yeah. Building Something Out of Nothing.
Yeah, it's like a B-sides record.
It is.
It's like I know the riff to that song for some reason. You showed you this song, and then you're like, "This is how you play it. It's fucking easy," and it was. But my dad really liked that record. Good news for people that love bad news. He had it in his truck when we were growing up. I had Apple Music, and when like streaming first became a thing, and I was able to go hunt for songs and get interested in little things. And I talked to my dad about Modest Mouse. He's like, "Oh, I used to be into Modest Mouse, and when you were young, and he was pretty hip and stuff that they would play on like 96 Rock." My uncle's really into Modest Mouse. Like he's at the one that's into like the National, and so I was exposed to them for a while. But they're like a band that I never have really given much energy to. I imagine they can kind of turn into a little bit of like a Radiohead for me, where I know a little bit of everything by them and like end up having like a favorite record. And they definitely like lean into some early 2000s alt tropes for me a little bit. I think having the perspective of doing transatlanticism, you kind of just show me little things here and there. I feel like one of the hardest parts about this record specifically that I didn't find with like if you're listening to Float On, the instrumentation with the vocal performance is a little off. And I don't.
Yes.
I think he is not a strong male lead singer.
This is very true.
His range is really flat for the most part.
Yeah.
Where normally you could hold out a melody or like a note, but for the most part he cuts them short. And if he really wants to like let something hang, he'll make a kind of sound at the end.
Yeah.
So stuff like that was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was getting under my skin, but like it was a little left to more to be desired.
There's something brash and sloppy and rickety about the way these records are performed, written, and produced. And I don't want you to feel like guilty if you like didn't love the record, because I don't think that this is a perfect record. I don't think Modest Mouse has a perfect record. There's always been this perfect imperfectness about their stuff, where this record has 15 songs?
It's an hour long.
Their first 4 or 5 albums are all very overly long, and there's always going to be peaks and valleys where it's going to sag in some spots. Like stylistically, this record is a lot more expansive and jammy compared to some of their previous stuff, where their record before this, 97's The Lonesome Crowded West, is way more sloppy. And I almost recommended that one, but I thought it would be too much for you.
Good news for people that love bad news is pretty clean for the most part. Like when I think of Float On, like that's a really tight song. Like the song's really treble heavy, and it like works with his voice more. And I feel like that's probably why it's probably the most popular record by them and like most commercially successful for the most part. And like I don't mind when bands get experimental and drift into like psychedelia or like even shoegaze, or maybe like lean into like there are specific spots in this record where I'm like, that's a rip from this album by this artist, and we'll get there. But something that like really fucking made me mad is the album art. It fucking makes me so aggravated.
Even Isaac Brock hates the album art for this.
I cannot stand it.
Well, it's like Photoshop 101 type stuff.
God, I hate it.
Oh my God, the handshake in the sky where like the sleeves don't reach the out, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't reach the edge of the vinyl. They're just kind of floating there.
Like I feel like it could be done well by today's standard if you like added like more of a graphic design touch to it, like illustrated, like some line art or some shit. But it's so fucking weird to me. It reminds me of I've seen covers for Dune that are super fucking old that take the original art that was made for the hardcovers of the books when they were first released, and they crop the image down really small and put like a neutral tone in the like just like that on the front cover with the title in this bland ass font. And I'm like, God, who made this? And maybe it was like a sign of the times or something. Maybe it's early 2000s or like late 90s. I don't give a fuck. We're fucking alt, bro.
It was, man. It was a DIY culture. Indie hadn't broken out into the mainstream yet. I mean, this is the year 2000. Their record, Good News, probably is one of the top 3 records that helped indie rock like reach that like that peak of mainstream appeal, I guess. Like stuff like with that record and like the Shins and those groups kind of made indie popular. I've always found it really weird that Modest Mouse reached the level of popularity that they did.
Like,
I think
my dad knows about them, so.
yeah, like they're the most oddball group to ever have a number one hit. Like Float On was a number one fucking hit on rock radio. That's bizarre to me because if you listen to this record or their previous stuff, they sound like they were destined to play stinky ass basements for the rest of their career, and they broke through. Really fucking odd to me.
I mean, I get it, but we also have I was born a year before this came out.
Yeah.
So like we have so it's like a little over 20 years old. There's so much like music that came after that is so much more advanced or like
Well, of course.
multi-genred. I mean, when I think about indie or like alternative from when I was like in my adolescence, I immediately think of like Panic at the Disco or Fall Out Boy or My Chemical Romance. And like they come off the heels of shit like this, which I find like super bizarre. I mean, I know that's how my dad found out about those bands. Like my dad we had 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. I got Black Parade for like my 14th birthday. He had Modest Mouse. He also had Pearl Jam. And like my mom had input on this too. I don't want to, my dad he's cool, but he ain't that cool, you know? But like, I mean, we had I Write Sins Not Tragedies. We had that album. Is that the title of the album?
It's called A Fever You Can't Sweat Out.
Correct. The song Time to Dance off that record goes fucking hard. You ever heard that one?
I have.
That's a fucking good one.
My wife likes them. Me, on the other hand, I'm not into the polished mid-2000s, like pop punk craze, really. I never have been. But I get it. Me and you, we come from different places when it comes to like...
You old as fuck.
I am old as fuck.
I'm cool as shit.
I'm really getting there.
You're all right.
I'm still waiting for my first gray hair to come in.
Dude,
okay?
30 is the new 20. You're going to be okay.
I hope so.
You're going to be okay. Dude, the way the economy's set up, us 20-year-olds, bro, we're like 18 these days. Like mid-20s is like you're 16 again.
But I get your apprehensive nature to stuff like this where it's a little shitty.
Well, I wasn't super high on transatlanticism either. Like,
yeah, and that one was polished sounding for the most part.
I think a part of it was like some of the vocals.
It was the singer. I know. This is a more eccentric, personality-driven singer than that was, I would argue.
Yeah, he becomes how do I put it? It's I don't want to say it's Linkin Park like, but
no,
it's without the rap beat behind it. It kind of feels like he's like stepping on a tempo. Like his lyrics are delivered in a way that it's like non-melodic.
Sometimes,
like
it's more rhythmic in nature.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I think there's some good melodies on this record. Like, I think there's a few tunes that kind of foretell their pop future in a way. But as much as you see what Isaac Brock lacks as like a conventional singer, I'm a big fan of his lyric writing.
Yeah. There were a lot of songs where I pulled a lot. I think similar to Siamese Dream and Smashing Pumpkins, where the lead singer of that band, he has his moments where he's not as strong and he has his moments where he does great. The lyrics on that record really surprised me, and like actually sitting down and digesting them in an attentive way, it kind of felt, like I got a lot from this record that I didn't think I was going to get in that way. For some reason, like going into listening to the record, I was like, for some reason expected like a lot of drumming. Like I was thinking like, oh, Modest Mouse must be like a lot of like really intricate, crazy drumming. But I think honestly that like we're talking like what I pulled the most from on the record isn't really so much instrumental, but like lyricism and like themes and shit like that. And I think that was like right up my alley for like my personality. I'm sure you'll agree.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think that the instrumentation is a strong point on the record, but the lyrics have always been kind of the drawing point to them for me. And especially with this record, there's a heavy emphasis on existentialism, God, death. It's a very cynical record for the most part. Yeah, it's right up my alley.
I think, yeah. Pessimism. I think interesting fact I found out was that the title of the record is based off of an article from the Blade Runner films that's like right at the opening of the film.
I just discovered this today, actually.
God, we need to do that. We need to do that film sometime.
We will.
I don't know. I don't think this album would fit as a good soundtrack, but it does like kind of bring up similar questions to that film for the most part. God, nature of humanity, belief systems. I found a lot of that really interesting. I guess like the opening track is Third Planet, which I'm assuming is Earth, is the third planet in the solar system.
It is.
What is it? Mercury, Mars, Earth.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I think that's right. I think it's right. Fucking my fourth grade brain's working hard to remember.
I haven't taken physical science in like a decade.
I make physical science all the time with my girl.
That was smooth.
That was a Lil Uzi. That was a Lil Uzi line. If you didn't know.
Oh, it was.
No, but it sounds like it could be. You just gotta go at the end of it. Pain pills.
Lil Uzi Vert would never say the phrase "physical science" in a line.
You're right. Please cut that whenever you get to it.
No.
I like this track though. It's kind of a weird opener.
In what way?
I guess like in retrospect to a lot of the rest of the record. There are other songs though in the record that kind of like lean more into a stripped down, more guitar centric, maybe a little snare here and there, but like for the most part that's it. But I guess I was expecting like a bravado, a little bit more of an intense opening record for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why. I like the album art just screams like we're going deep on this one, but it didn't really happen.
It takes until about the middle of the record to start getting really expansive.
But like the guitar sounds like it's got nylon strings on it with like an echo or a reverb.
It's really thin sounding.
Yeah.
Especially when like the distortion kicks in. And this might be some of the worst distortion I've ever heard. Yeah. It is so tinny and aluminum sounding, but that's kind of the charm for me at least.
I think it works well though. Like the title is Third Planet, and it's eventually like at the bridge he like is insinuating that the Earth is similar to the universe.
Shaped exactly like the Earth.
If you go straight enough, long enough, you'll end up exactly where you were. I'm like, okay, I'm here. I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm here for it. I think that like kind of opens up though thematically like what you're gonna get into, which is pretty smart.
I think lyrically, when it comes to like the way Isaac Brock writes songs, he tackles pretty heavy subjects, but he does it with what I consider to be like trailer park philosophy. Like there's like this simplicity to it in a way.
He encapsulates the "it is what it is" mentality.
Yeah,
the white man special. Yeah, trailer trash mentality. Like, yeah, man, that's just the way it be,
Yeah, he's the smartest guy in the trailer park, but it's still, what it is. I've always had a hard time nailing down like what the overall subject of the song is, because we have a verse about a boss quitting the job to go find the blind spots, which I know is like a reference to like going into the unknown, basically. Then you have the universe stuff, but then you also have the line, "The third planet, sure they're being watched by an eye in the sky that can't be stopped. When you get to the promised land, you're going to shake that eye's hand." And that's like religion and stuff, of course. But I'm thinking about how does this all tie together? And I'm especially confused when I read a interpretation of the song today where they said it's about a miscarriage.
Nah.
Something about like where the third planet is like the third member of a family, where like you have like a father, a mother, and then like the child would be like the third planet, I guess. And there's stuff about baby cum angels.
Yeah.
Which for the longest time I thought was like some weird like semen reference, but like baby cum angels as in like babies that die, like become angels. It's very bizarre. I know it's a lot to take in.
Well, you really had me there with the God thing, but then you said baby cum. That's where you lost me. I think maybe, and this is kind of just my perspective, I think a lot of it is a little bit of a lot of nonsense.
Maybe, yeah.
It's kind of reminds me of maybe like a similar philosophy to kind of what I have. It's like a existential optimism where you're like quite aware that a lot of this shit doesn't make sense, but you're like, it is what it is. And when it comes to like religion and God or our spot in the universe, I don't know if it has to make too much sense. I think it does kind of lay out like questions to maybe like be answered throughout the rest of the album.
Yeah, like the one-liners isolated are really good, but trying to tie it together is a little hard.
And that's the other thing too. And I kind of like had gone into the podcast thinking like, is there going to be like is this a concept record? Like I didn't like, and I'm like, no, it can't be a concept record if I'm not picking up on anything. Like it must not be. And I think maybe it just might be like loose ideas kind of tied together instrumentally for the most part. And that's kind of vague, but
The structure of the song is very weird too. I don't think there's solidified verses and choruses. It's more just like 3 or 4 different verses, and like the song kind of just moves through them. That opening line, like everything that keeps me together is falling apart, it doesn't return to that melody for like 4 minutes until the song ends. Everything in the middle is just kind of going through these random, like, here's a new guitar riff for this new section. Like, and that's kind of shown on many songs.
There's another track that does that.
Stuff like Life Like Weeds does that a lot.
Yep. It's a little bit all over the place, but I mean, it's the opening track. I know it's like first or second most popular off the record, followed up by this next track, which is Gravity Rides Everything.
Yeah.
This one's weird. Like, I like it a lot, but it's like kind of, for some reason, it gives me like almost like a church group vibe, like a jammy campfire, like optimistic song for some reason.
Do you think that might have to do with the way the acoustic guitar is produced on this track, where it's
like
some of the sloppiest strumming that you've ever heard?
Yeah, that might be it.
Like, dude, just learn the G chord and then play it on the record.
The percussion is so stripped down. It sounds like a dude tapping maybe like a scraping of like 2 drumsticks or like 2 blocks of wood together. I mean, it's like really dry. Like, that's kind of giving me that vibe where it's just like someone's hitting something.
Yeah, like a block of wood. It might be like an electronic element, for all I know. The snare is really weird. Like, it doesn't sound like a sound that would be produced off of like a percussive instrument. I don't know, it's got like a bubbly quality to it in a way. This is actually one of my top 3 tracks on the album, maybe.
Okay.
It's the closest thing that the record comes to a ballad, and I say that very loosely.
A lot of their tracks don't make sense. They almost kind of feel like demos, like slapped on to an album at certain spots.
Yeah.
Where like one track can be 8 minutes long, but the next one's going to be 2, and it's going to be even less produced than the one prior.
Yeah. One of my biggest criticisms of this record in particular is that some songs are underdeveloped, and then there's a few songs that I think are overdeveloped.
Okay. Is this one of those tracks where you feel like it's underdeveloped?
I think this one is perfectly developed.
Okay. All right.
There's a lot of great use of reverse guitar on this track.
Reverse guitar.
Like the intro, where it like kind of feels like air being sucked backwards, basically. Like, it's got like a weird intro to it. I don't know. It's a catchy track. There's some really great guitar leads that come in like during the choruses. I think the melody is good, where this is one of the ones where Brock's vocals are probably the most normal. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
He kind of has a similar thing with Tom York for me, where it's kind of feels like he's a little bit of parody of himself a lot. And
Okay.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a vibe that I get from him.
I get it.
I know this song is the title of the track is maybe kind of insinuating that like gravity is at the center of it all, or it's like maybe one piece of the puzzle that actually makes sense. I mean, like one of the verses talks about like what's that writing on your shelf in the bathrooms and the bad motels? No one really cared for it all.
I've always found this to be a very weird verse.
Yeah, stuff like that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's a very catchy song. Sorry, I had to get it. I gotta get it in my head.
Oh, gotta see. Yeah.
I think it's an approachable track. I don't know lyrically that it's doing a whole lot for me though, emotionally. I think it sounds really good though. I mean, it's a track that I can just kind of breeze through, no questions asked. And I think maybe the stripped down nature is working for it in a positive way, where there like isn't too much to like hate on or dissect. It can kind of be like summed up as like a track you breeze through. That's for me. Like, I know if it's maybe like one of your favorites, you might like, do you think more highly of it because it's stripped down, or like are you pulling anything more from it that maybe I'm not getting at?
I don't know. Lyrically, I've never really been able to decipher it that well.
But it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, I get the ideas of like gravity is weighing us down. Like, there's like this unknown invisible force that's like kind of a barrier between you and an obstacle in a way. Like, but like that would be interpreting it, trying to draw something out of it. I mean, there's a line about when fruit drops, flesh it sags, which I always thought was weird. But of course, like gravity's effect on like humans, where like as you age, like your skin, you get wrinkles and you sag. You know what I mean? Like I kind of see where it ties in, but I don't know. It's pretty vague to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it reminds me of like Siamese Dream and like the lyricism on that a lot, where some tracks are more vague than others and don't make as much sense. And then like there are other like smaller tracks or like more stripped down tracks that we'll get to, like Family of Wild Dogs or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that track's more stripped down, but it makes a lot more sense thematically to me, and like lyrics work a little bit more together. But the only way to like understand things when they're super vague is to get the artist's exact input. It seems to be the case that not a lot of artists like talking about the vague shit very much. They're like, yeah, man. And I think part of that might be the bullshit nature of art in some ways.
Sometimes you just write.
Sometimes, yeah, you write something that just sounds deep and it may not be. And perfect example is like Bon Iver. We've had this conversation many times, but it's like beautiful prophecy spilling bullshit nonsense, like specifically 22 Million and maybe a little bit into like I, where like things are sounding like they're symbolically important, but for the most part it's just a lot of muddled together symbols that end up sounding like they mean something to the specific the listener, where they can derive their own interpretation or you get a vibe from it, you know what I mean?
But as long as the presentation's good,
Correct.
then you're not going to ask any questions, really.
Correct.
We can move into Dark Center of the Universe, which, in my opinion, is not a song I've ever really cared for that much.
I didn't have a lot to say about it. There's a lot of fucking choruses, though. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, which brings me to one of my big gripes about the record is the use of repetition, where verse 1 will be the same as verse 2, or like they're not doing enough to mix up things as the track moves forward. Because I think like the song introduces itself in an interesting way, where there's like more of this like semi post rock instrumental like use of like he's playing high on the guitar neck and he's doing all these like little I wouldn't say like tremolo picking, but it gives me like an explosions in the sky or like this will destroy you, like a very rudimentary version of that. But then the song, it becomes loud and then it just goes full force with that one sound the whole time. You know what I mean? It's a little stale.
Yeah, and there's other spots in the record where I feel like that, where I think part of that is the rhythmic nature of his vocal delivery. Like specifically, it feels like the chord progression goes on and on and on and on and on in drones forever, and like there's very rarely any bridges or like things like break up. And a lot of the time, the chords being used in a chorus, if there is like a pre-chorus or a bridge, it's like almost the same sounding chord progression picked in a different way. Maybe the inverse. I don't know. The strumming pattern's the exact same, or the picking pattern's the exact same, where it's really hard to differentiate. And he's keeping the same tempo with his vocal delivery, where it kind of feels like it's hard to separate or feel like you've gone through a journey or an arc in certain spots. Some songs will feel like it's a great story being told, and others it feels like I don't know where this song starts, begins, where's the middle, and before I know it, it's over type of thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If there's like one thing I get out of the track, it's that I really like the line, "It took a lot of work to be the ass that I am," which is a great line. This is a philosophy that you live by, right?
It sure is, dude. You beat me to it. Yeah. I have a motto I live by. It's that some people think I'm the coolest guy in the room, and some people think I'm the biggest asshole in the room, and like both of those things are true. And it just kind of is what it is.
It means you might be doing something right then.
Correct. The bad press works in my favor sometimes.
Yeah. That's really all I have to say about this track. I've never cared for this one, really. It overstays its welcome, and I usually forget that it's on the album until I go back and listen to it.
Before we get like too caught up in the track list, I want to ask you, like, where does this record sit for you in their discography? Of like, do you have a favorite record by them?
Weirdly enough, no, I don't think so. I think their first 4 records are all equally sloppy in their own ways, and I just go to the highlights, typically.
That's answers a good question for me, because sometimes when you think of a band and like, I like them. I'm actually wearing merch from them right now, but like Brockhampton, talked about them plenty. I love a lot of their, like pretty much all of their records I like really vibe with, but I like 3 or 4 songs off Ginger, maybe. But like I respect the arc that the band was going through at the time. Like I have a favorite Saturation record, but the other 2, you know, they have like great highlights. And then they have their sleeper hits, and like they're not like perfect records. And I don't think Brockhampton really has a perfect record. Roadrunner, I think of like 3 or 4 songs. I'm like, man, this really is what I return to. Or an Iridescence I think I love the most, but like that record is fucking sloppy and just noisy and abrasive and doesn't make fucking sense. But like that's how I view them in my head, even though I love them so much.
You're just thinking about all the highlights
Correct.
of their discography. That's how Modest Mouse is with me.
Okay. I don't know. Like, I haven't visited the National enough to ever really feel like I have a favorite record by them, but I definitely have, like, a handful of favorite songs. When I think about them, like, they're a vibe. Like, they have a specific sound that I'm hunting for. And maybe that's, I don't know. I mean, similar with Radiohead, like, but In Rainbows is definitely my favorite.
I think Radiohead definitely has records that are much better than others.
And I think In Rainbows is a perfect record. Like, that's a masterpiece record. But
It is.
But then there are other records where, even if I respect it, I don't like most of the songs. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I was curious because I guess I knew that you were into them, and I wanted to know your perspective because, I don't know, I feel like you don't bring them up enough.
My honeymoon period with them has been over for a long time. But, I mean, when I think about Modest Mouse, I just think about their discography as a whole. Here's this era, and there's like a bunch of great songs out of that era, and that's pretty much how it goes. I mean, they're one of those bands that their B-sides are often highlights, which I don't think is apparent in a lot of bands, where like that shit usually gets forgotten or tossed to the side.
I think I'm out of the honeymoon phase with Brockhampton. I've been thinking about that lately because I'm like almost kind of tired of listening to them, even though I know I love these songs, and they're definitely like in my top few favorite bands or like just groups or artists in general. I don't know. They're not releasing new music on the horizon. Like maybe that might be a thing, but
it's hard when a group either breaks up or starts making shitty music.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to love them after that.
Yeah, it's like you fucked up that good thing you had going on.
And you can't get excited about new material.
Deftones has kind of been that way for you, hasn't they? Like they have like a period of time where like they're really hitting good, and then their most recent shit that they release isn't really like your thing.
No, I liked their last record.
Did you?
Yeah.
What was the one before that?
It was called Gore, and that record sucks.
Okay, all right.
But it's one of the few blemishes in their
Gotcha.
discography.
It's weird. Like Kanye's kind of approached that now, where like his early shit, like he couldn't be stopped for the most part. I know 808s was pretty divisive for a lot of people, and Yeezus was also like, I'm sure like, a certain amount of his fan base exited it at that point. But then like he kind of captured a new audience with Life of Pablo and what's it called, Kids See Ghosts.
Yeah.
And like, but then Donda was fucking messy but beautiful, and
He has his flashes of brilliance. With Modest Mouse, I think it's all over. I don't think they're going to put out any more great stuff.
do they still tour?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah, they had a record come out just last year.
Really?
Yeah, it's called The Golden Casket, and I didn't care for it, really.
I want to talk about Perfect Disguise briefly. How do you feel about this record? Or this song, I should say.
I like this track, but I think it feels more like an interlude than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think they like kind of lean a little bit heavier. They lean a little heavy into like more psychedelic rock a little bit more. I think it's maybe like one of the first few times that happens on the record. And then also like I can't shake like the Broke My Back. It's like stuck in my head.
It's catchy.
It's too fucking catchy. It's really bothering me because I kept saying it all day long, and I'm like.
It's one of the few instances where there's like background vocals where you really don't see that throughout the record.
Yeah.
It's mostly all clean guitar on this one.
How many people like make up this band anyway?
There's only 3
Okay.
of them, which I think is something to be praised as well, where they're kind of on some tracks playing this jammy space rock that feels expansive and big, but there's only 3 of them. I think they do a good job at that. Banjo on this song.
Yeah.
This instrument would become very prominent on Good News, where it's on half of the tracks, for better or worse, in my opinion. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It's a good vibe. I like the guitar tone on this one. I think the guitar lines are good.
I know this song is kind of talking about like a split or like kind of like a fuck you, like I don't give a shit anymore type of breakup song.
Yeah. Whenever I play it in the car, I definitely sing along to the lines, I don't give a damn about you or this town. Like, I think it's a good line. Cocked your head, shoot me down.
Dude, tiny cities made of ash.
Okay. As a Modest Mouse fan, I'm going to upset some of my fellow brethren.
Don't like this song?
I've always hated this song, man.
Wow.
This song is...
This song.
You do?
I love this song.
Holy fuck. Okay, I'm going to let you speak first then.
Okay. First off, at the end of Perfect Disguise, like one of the chords that starts this song is like kind of pushed in a little bit on the end of that song, and it kind of makes for a little bit of there's a tempo. When the tempo stops, this song picks up. It's not like the chord rings into the next thing, but it's like it gets littered in really fast, and then before you know it, you've already started this song. Kind of snuck up on me the first time.
It's not a perfect transition, but it's definitely an example of them trying to have a continuity between these tracks. And I think the next few kind of have that going for it.
The reason why I like this track so much is that I think it's like the most different thing so far on the record that comes up. And then
that's true.
It reminds me so much of Station to Station by Bowie. Like it gives me, it's given me such, like his vocal delivery reminds me of it a lot. And like the squirrely bending chords really remind me of like just that vibe that record gives off. And that's the first thing that came to my head when I heard this song. I'm like, oh my God, this is like cocaine Bowie right here.
I've never thought about that before. That's actually a really good comparison.
Next time we'll have to listen to this afterwards and think about that when we listen to it. But that's why I liked it. And it kind of has like this like skin crawling, like it has like a bad trip, a drug time lapse feel that you could like shoehorn into a film. Like this could be the background.
Yeah, I could see that.
Kind of like the dissonant, it could get away. And it kind of goes on these drum breaks and the guitar bends. Like it kind of feels like rampagey, but like lost in the sauce type of shit.
I'm very shocked that this is like the first one that you've shown a lot of.
So we're drinking. Coca-Cola. It reminds me so much of Bowie. It's, I dug that shit.
I mean, I have to admit, the bass line is killer. It has like kind of a disco-esque genre mix here going on, which I guess could be the Bowie tie-in, where Station to Station definitely had a lot of like disco influence on it. I'm not gonna lie, I laugh at the line, the Lord called, said, hell's frozen over. He said, hey boy, get a sweater right now. I laugh out loud when I listen to it.
I do love the line, so we're drinking Coca-Cola. I can feel it rolling right on down my throat. I'm thinking that's instead of they're drinking Coca-Cola, they're doing cocaine. It's the drip.
It's the drip.
It's the drip, man. I had a conversation with Jeremiah about like cocaine. He's like, dude, it's a fucking disgusting drug. Like it's fucking nasty. Because literally the whole thing is to catch your loogie the whole fucking time. And he's like, that's fucking disgusting. And I'm like, that. Now that you say it like that, like cocaine has always been like this glamour drug for some reason, pop culture wise. But then I think about people that like still do cocaine. It seems like such a grimy, dirty, nasty.
Yeah.
Like comes across as so much more of a trashy drug than what I think it's been kind of pop culturally represented, like 80s Miami, like Vice City. Like
it's all a celebrity thing to do.
Yeah. Like it seems so much more gross. Like I'd rather do heroin than cocaine, I think.
You know what I don't like about the song? The tacky use of the synthesizer, where it pops in and out whenever it feels like it doesn't mesh with the instrumentation. I don't know. I think I'm with it for the first verse, and then when he starts doing the yelling shit over that synthesizer line, it sounds like tacky and annoying in a way.
And I think maybe the love for me, where I'm framing it in like a Bowie-esque vibe, I think I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a leadway, because it does kind of sound like it's being produced in like the 70s, where like the production isn't at the value that maybe it should be, or if it's a little bit more tacky. Like it's like it's trying to do something but it's actually already been done before. But like I don't know.
And it's a little bit more fun than a lot of the tracks here. I've seen Modest Mouse 4 times.
Really?
And they play this track every time, and the crowd goes fucking wild.
Good.
Modest Mouse fans love this song.
They fucking should. I liked it. I like it. I don't know. I can't believe you don't like this song. I thought you would love it.
I get it. I would never play this song, like single it out. I like spacey, aimless Modest Mouse.
I think the warbling, like the bending strings, kind of help tie in later. There's like a spacey UFO sounds that come later in the track list, and so it doesn't seem too far away. But this song is completely different from like the first few songs we listened to. So it's
a turning point for sure, and it marks a turning point for the record. I also, like, one last comment before we move on to other tracks. I think it showcases Isaac Brock's unique guitar playing style, where you were kind of talking about that bendy, like those bendy effects that he does. Isaac Brock owns the technique, which is called the harmonic bend. This is showcased across every Modest Mouse record. And you know how when me and you play guitar, I'm always overly bending notes like that? It comes from him. It's definitely influenced by Isaac Brock's guitar playing.
You do bend a lot.
I do.
It works, though. I mean, it's not like it's bad. I bend, and I'm like, oop, that didn't sound good. I don't know. I don't have too much to say for, like, the next 2 tracks. I kind of let you take the front here.
A Different City is also another track that I could do without. It opens up with a pretty cool, like, surf rock sounding jam.
Yeah.
Which is the only way I can really describe it. But I think that this guitar tone and, like, the effects pedal he's using is hideous. It's not good to my ears when I listen to this one. And it breaks out of the gate where it's immediately like, you know, I don't know. Not my thing, really.
Yeah, it is. It does have like a surfer vibe. You're right.
It's definitely the way the bass and the drums kind of mingle in the mix on this one. I also think that lyrically it's not the strongest, or I don't think any of the lines are all that hard hitting. I get what he's saying. Like, he wants to like isolate himself, so he like moves to the city and just watches TV all the time.
Maybe while it might not be like one of my favorite tracks or anything like that, or I don't want to return to it at all, it does do a good job of like painting a great picture. You can like fill the shoes of who this song's about. You know, maybe you're from a small town, you move to the city, you go to New York, Chicago, and you know, you post on your Instagram all weekend that all the parties you've been to and the people you hang out and the fashion that you're wearing. But it's never like any of your family, and you're making like weird, vague statements about like your financial success, even though you're probably living like paycheck to paycheck and your credit score is fucking terrible and you have $6,000 in debt at a minimum. And you're also taking classes at the college, but you're a photo major or photography major. You know, maybe you know, your parents send you money, but like they're living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, you know, that kind of vibe.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
You got a lot more out of it than I did.
You know, that's the picture that gets painted for me.
You're living in your $3,000 a month concrete box.
Your studio apartment. All your friends smoke cigarettes, even though you know it's terrible for you, but you picked it up on your sophomore year of college because you thought that's going to look good on my Instagram.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, man.
I do like the line. God damn it.
Sorry.
I like the line, I want to remember to forget you forgot me, which is very much a what kind of thing. He likes to play with words, though. There's kind of like a satirical irony like to his phrases where they don't necessarily have to make sense, but he's just fucking around, I guess. I like it. You said you don't have much to say about
The cold part.
I think the cold part begins a trilogy of songs where I kind of always lump this one together with Alone Down There and The Stars Are Projectors.
Okay.
And this is definitely one of those subgroups where we can lump these songs together.
Okay.
The cold part is actually my favorite of these 3 songs, though.
These are one of the few songs that I feel like the most blind on. And I think, unfortunately, like with my listening experience, that things did kind of blend together in the middle.
They still have that effect to
long.
me 15 years after listening to the record.
Kind of been having that self-doubt of like, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough to say about this, but for the most part a lot of things do feel
homogenous.
Like there will be 20 minutes that'll go by where I'm like, oh wait, how many, where am I at, like where am I at on this track list? You know, it's like, oh, it's been 30 minutes, like similar to like the Swans or something, where it's like, oh, we're doing 20 minutes of, I don't have much to say about it. I do have some for like Alone Down Here, but
I think I like this track because it's one of the most somber ones where it just kind of takes its time to be slow and methodical and have all these spacey guitar parts. Lyrically, I don't think it's standout-ish.
There's barely any lyrics on the track.
Yeah, and really the entire theme or like a motif lyrically is so long to this cold part of the world, and it'll be like a different iteration of that lyric each time. Like it doesn't really expand much. I think it's more of a vibe song than it is like a tune, like a great song.
Okay, Alone Down Here, let me tell you something. Why does this track sound like a Metallica riff?
Does it?
I think it does. It gives me like a...
Like one vibes.
When a metal band like strips back down a little bit more, like using maybe I don't know, I'm trying to think like a brick combo on our amps over there. Like it's like somewhere between distortion and clean. Yeah, and it does have like that one vibe with the and the drums like has almost like the same tempo as one. And the track is like lyrically the way the vocals are delivered almost seems like mockery, like the devil speaking to you or something.
Yeah, I think quite literally the lyrics of the song were influenced by an acid trip that Isaac Brock had, where he says that he met the devil.
How do you do? My name is you. It's weird, but there's anime I really love, and I think actually you would love, called Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, I've heard of it. It's like one of the most famous ones, right?
Yeah, it's like relatively like commercially successful. Like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is the proper. There's two. God, I hate doing this, but there's two animes.
Are we gonna give the lineage?
Fucking Japanese people, dude. Full Metal Alchemist, the first one, was made when the manga was being written still, and it caught up to the manga where they had to make their own ending. And so after that show, like the ending like sucked and it didn't like really work, and it wasn't like the original artist's vision. They redid it years later, better quality, newer animation, and it was a 1-to-1 of the actual manga. But in that show, it's centered around alchemy. When you do use alchemy for sin, essentially, you end up meeting the devil, which is also like God, which is also you. And it kind of reminded me of that.
Oh my God.
It's like you're staring yourself in the face, but in actuality, like it's like a culmination of ideas, and it's very trippy, and it's like a really complex thing for like a TV 14 age, anime, but it's really great. I highly recommend it to anybody that would be even remotely interested in it. It's a great fucking story. But it reminded me of that, just where it's like staring yourself in the face, looking at the darkest parts of yourself. I don't know, very strange, and almost like the Metallica sound. It was kind of unexpected for me listening to the record. I was wanting to hear like the Float On, like
what were you waiting for, like the pop tune to
come? And it just it was darker than I had imagined I was gonna get. So this sound I wouldn't like tie to the band just on like first thought, you know what I mean?
Well, this is like pretty new to you. I mean, the one thing that you knew was their pop record.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. I do like the line, but the devil's apprentice, he gave me some credit, he fed me a line, and I'll probably regret it. Reference to like drug use, maybe. This is honestly one of the tracks that I have the least to say about.
Okay.
One of my least favorites on the record. I do get the Metallica tie-in, where I think the clean guitar and the bass kind of like mingles in a way where like it almost feels like 80s metal, where like there's one of those slow down moments that they do. It's not one of my favorites. The chorus is okay. The verses are okay.
I mean, I know the track, like, it kind of separates from the intro of the track and, like, kind of turns into more of, like, a yelling, the repetition of be alone. I don't want you to be alone down there. Like, it kind of over and over again. Kind of maybe a little bit more appropriate and, like, recognizable from earlier in the record. But, like, the intro to the track was like, whoa, what the? Okay, we're here. We're doing drugs. Okay.
I think the most fun fact that I have about this song is that my friend Nathan, his brother made a music video for it that's on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, it probably has like 100 views for all I know.
We're going to watch it in a little bit.
But I've seen it, and you're about to see it.
Okay. This next track, The Stars Are Projectors, I assume you have a lot to say.
Oh,
okay.
I'm interested in what you have to say about it, though.
I like the themes of this track. Talking about, God, how do I put it? Jesus, it's already complex enough. Talking about, here we go. And the stars are projectors, projecting our lives down to this planet Earth, and like maybe talking about consciousness. There's kind of been Eastern philosophy ideas that have kind of come through on like mainstream, and I think it's like grown a little bit more popular with like my generation and younger than us. But just like ideas of like this, our consciousness, it might be like unified, or we're somewhere beyond this dimension living on the third, like if we're speculating about higher dimensions, and like if our consciousness in this third dimension means something to us, like, well, hypothetically, the manipulation of being able to move through time being the fourth dimension instead of like space being the third, like, are we living on this earth infinite amount of times, things like that, where I find super interesting. And I think it kind of leans into like that existential idea of, you know, we don't know what this thing is. No one can find out what the beginning of time was. Things where we need the sun to be alive and somehow we're here. Maybe that is the theme of the stars are projecting us, being like the sun is the real thing keeping us alive here. We're like
we depend on it.
We're perfectly suspended in this space in this specific amount of time at this specific point on this Earth's timeline to be alive and to think on it.
It's this weird fucking miracle that shouldn't be possible.
Correct. You know, I'm interested about stuff like that. And I think I had heard something recently about like there are like two types of religion in the world. There's like top down and bottom up. Where top down is that you view God as somebody outside yourself and you aim to be at that and you use that moral, like that framework to live your life by, and that will give you meaning and it will ease your suffering and existentialism in that way because you know there are things beyond you that you cannot control and you know you aim to be better because of that.
And you say that's bottom up?
That's top down. So there's something, there's like the eye in the sky, there's the God, there's, you know, the Holy Trinity or whatever, like Christianity using a central figure as a means to an end. And then there's bottom up where it's you try to
find like inner, it's like an inner kind of thing.
An inner piece or like a inner
God is what you make it.
Yeah, what your belief system is, or if you were to focus on the smallest thing that you can give the utmost attention to, like meditation, breathing, and like this mindfulness mindset where you're looking at the world from inside out. You know, you take in all the sensory, and I think I definitely lean more towards into that realm of belief system. And you know, to each is their own. And I think, but I find that interesting. And I think maybe this song kind of leans more into that bottom up mentality of like, I'm somehow aware of this thing that I'm in, but I'm not looking at a central figure to like be like, hey, this is the source of it. I'm just somehow aware that I'm now here. And there's so much space and time expanded out from what I can notice that I just have to accept the fact that I'm small and it doesn't fucking matter type of mentality.
I think that's kind of explored on the track Lives later on in the record, where he has a line about God as a woman and like my mom is a witch or something like that. Yeah, people, you are your own God, basically. Correct. And he says it on this song too. God is a woman and the woman is an animal. The animal's man, and that's you. Which is a little bit of a mindfuck in terms of verbiage, but I get it though. I get it.
I think it's tying into earlier talking about where does a circle begin?
Yeah, it's a different track, but I can't remember which one.
We're just talking about like we're in like this cycle. Maybe so like maybe if God is a central part of the cycle that you look up to, somehow that has to come back around to you. Like if you're gonna suspend God in a way that he's a source that you come from, well, you're also creating that source that you come from in your own head. It's just like this infinite loop of questioning and it doesn't really make sense. That's like an expansive kind of mindset rather than like a reductionist mindset where it's like maybe all things are tied together rather than like, you know, I'm just here type of a mentality where like you're not really trying to give much meaning to whatever, life is. And I think Lives does a little bit more to touch on that, but I think maybe this track was more of a talking about more of the universe and maybe our relationship to it, maybe from the artist's eyes.
That was so much deeper than I thought we would get on this song.
I didn't want to do it, but you let me.
No, that was great. I need to start getting you drunk before we hop on the mics, and I won't drink until the mics turn on. That way we can get the best of both of us.
You don't want that because I'll be like, man.
You'll do that on every song. I think I'm lukewarm on this track because I find it kind of a slog. When it comes to like the tune, I find it that we have riff ideas that don't tie together that great. We're kind of just jumping from one idea to the next, where like each riff isn't improving the other by like existing next to each other. You know what I mean? This is a 9-minute song. I also think that it sets itself up in a really epic way where like you have this climactic, like these loud parts with all these like not choir vocals, but like gang vocals coming in, where it sounds like Isaac Brock is like kind of a voice in his own head. But then we get to the official first verse after all this epic instrumentation, and he comes in with this delivery where he just goes, and the stars are projectors, yeah. And I'm like, it kills it for me a little bit. I don't know. This is one of those tracks where it feels like it should be the most awesome because they're really great at jamming, but I think more is less on this track.
Oh, excuse me. The Where Do Circles Begin is at the outro, the vocal outro for this track. But then after that, you get like a 2 to 3 minute like jam session where it's like you get like those UFO sounds that I was alluding to earlier.
And that's probably my favorite section of the track where we get real spacey. I do like the line, "You've got the harder part, you've got the kinder heart," kind of saying that like somebody that has the ability to feel more empathy is going to have a harder time in life.
Fucking agreed. Fucking agreed.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
Why is he speaking to me? I hate this.
Right wing, left wing, chicken wing.
Polly want a cracker. Sorry. Yeah, what the fuck? I didn't get that line. Like, every time I hear it, I'm like, why'd you say that?
It felt like it was out of place on this track, specifically. That felt like it was more of a line that would be in a different city.
Yeah, for sure. Where, like, you can kind of, like, tie in those corny deliveries, but, it makes more sense in the context of the instrumentation going on.
Uh-huh.
Like, I love the lines, in the last second of life, they're going to show you how they run this show. God damn. And I think that's a pretty interesting idea where, like, some people have the thought that when you die, you're going to somehow discover a secret that none of us know, but you're not going to be able to tell anybody because you're dying, like you're on your way out, like, so you're not going to be able to communicate that information along to us. Interesting concept. Like, some people would believe that like you have a DMT trip when you die. Like, when you die, your brain releases all this DMT. And
I've heard that, and that's where you see like the light at the end of the tunnel, or like your life flashes before your eyes.
Yeah, stuff like that. Where it's interesting idea, but none of us will know till we get there. And I think realistically, don't have that expectation because when you die, you're gonna be dead. So don't look forward to it. Other than that, like I like this track. I like the jammy section of it. For the most part, it was the most interesting thing going on for the majority of the record, in my opinion. Instrumentally, I think it's pretty dense.
Okay, so it's a track highlight for you?
Yeah, I was interested by it. I don't know if I loved it, but thematically, I love the themes. The problem I have is because we're like, sometimes we're hating on like, oh, like this feels experimental, but the production value isn't all that great. But then it's also like, hey, vocal delivery isn't there. So it's like, I don't really know if I'm loving listening to this because it's like kind of mid, like a 7 out of 10 all across the board when it comes to like vocal delivery, instrumentation, but thematically it's really interesting and fun lyrics. And that's like the interesting part.
It's a lot of songs on this record.
And then, it's a lot of that. So, I don't know, is that what you come for though?
It's also kind of a detriment because I consider this to be the last of this trilogy in the middle of the record where you've kind of been through 2 okay songs that kind of build up to it, to this 9-minute fucking piece of music. I think like by this time in the record, I get a little tired and then I'm woken up by the next track.
I like this song.
Wild Pack of Family Dogs.
I like this song a lot.
This is a cute little song that's incredibly dark at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is I think it's thematically it's doing it for me, and then also it's a little bit more stripped back and it's not trying to be too much. So like that's okay with me, and like that's where I think that's kind of that pocket that they lie in. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably like the biggest thing of why they were like kind of more poppy and commercially successful with the later record of Good News for people that love bad news. You can kind of tie in fun thematic ideas, symbols, and imagery, but let's do it in a way that's not so dark.
That is this record's biggest detriment, I think.
And it's just because I think it's not done well for the majority of the tracks. Like, I thought Tiny Cities Made of Ashes is a great song, but it's stark contrast to a lot of the other songs on the record.
Yeah.
And it's about the only track where I felt like the production was done in a way that I felt was true and up to par in the way that was presented compared to like some of the other experimental shit.
The record needs more of a defined variety. And I think you said it earlier that there's like a homogenous nature to it, and that is the record's biggest falling back point. I can get lost in a lot of these jammy sections, but the tunes aren't there as much as they are in some other Modest Mouse records. But with Wild Pack of Family Dogs, this song has its own flavor. There's nothing else on the record that's really like it. It almost comes across to me as like this folky tall tale. You know, like you hear those like, how would I describe it? Like these like wives' tales.
Yep. Oh, what are those called? Like a folk tale.
Like, don't spill your salt, don't break a mirror, don't let a wild pack of family dogs take your sister. You know, like, yeah, there's
superstitions. If you go out one door, you got to come back in the same door.
It's a very short track, though.
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes long.
I will say, accordion.
Yeah.
The one and only appearance of accordion on the record. And I think the only appearance of accordion, like, across their discography, as far as I can remember. It's different. It's just a little folktale.
I really love the lyricism on this one. The Wild Pack of Family Dogs is kind of like, I think it's being pinned up as an outcast group that, you know, you might get sucked up by, that you find solace in. I definitely felt that when I went to the Peach Pit concert. Like, I'm like, oh, these are all like the middle kids, or the oldest in the family type of, I don't know, like feeling like, oh, you're the kid that the parents got the mistakes out on, and you're the fucked up one, unfortunately. And so
that's me.
Hey, me too, man. But just talking about My Mother's Crying Blood Dust Now is an interesting thing. Shout out to the genius annotator, whoever it may be, is saying that instead of tears, it is blood dust, being that it's the opposite of liquid. It's the opposite of tears.
It's a coarse material.
And really they're crying about what would be going against the expectations that have been laid out before you. Go to college, get a job, start a family. But instead, like, you're 36 and you're maybe still at an entry level job, but you know, you have a really strong friend group. You know what I mean? There's like these scales of balance when it comes to society, where maybe you have a great job and you did the proper steps, but maybe you're emotionally unsatisfied in a lot of ways that maybe you're blind to. On the other side, maybe you don't pursue that career path, but you really found who you are and you understand yourself better than the people that are amongst your age group.
You've got better support systems, and God, it's weird to think about.
Yep.
I don't like that.
Yep. Wise words of a 23-year-old over here. Talking about, like, my dad, he quit his job today. Well, I guess he was fired, but that's okay. It's a funny line. And I think it kind of ties into similarly with like being emotionally underdeveloped and just kind of like brushing it off the shoulder, like not giving it much attention to. Like maybe you can't sit in the fact that you got fired, but you tell your family you got laid off or you quit.
I mean, he also uses the phrase, and I guess that she was eaten up. Okay. Like there's like a very like non-caring attitude about these events.
Yeah, it's like you're brushing it off your shoulder, like, oh, you know, it is what it is. God, I hate that. I hate that phrase, but it is what it is. That's life.
I do too. I never say it. Almost never.
It fucking sucks to say because you're like, oh, this is such a cop-out, but I like it. It's a cute little track, and I think it kind of like brings us back on track to where we were prior to like that little trilogy that we went through, where it, you know, becomes more folky and stripped down and kind of like leans into the band's strengths a little bit more, where things don't have to be as cinematic and executed poorly.
Yeah, and I think that it's pretty telling that Modest Mouse never really tried to go for cinematic stuff ever again after this record.
Like, I mean, it kind of felt like they were leaning into like Pink Floyd and, you know, trying to like, you know, kind of create a story that people can grasp onto, reflect equally amongst many different age groups and all this shit. It doesn't really work.
It goes against what Modest Mouse is, like especially with like the Pink Floyd comparison, where like Isaac Brock's vocals on top of these psychedelic instrumentation, they like contradict each other, and sometimes contradictions can work in film and music and art in general, but not here really.
I do like this next track,
Paper Thin Walls. I think this is probably the most obvious single from the record, most straightforward. It's a little more upbeat. It's got verses and choruses and a bridge. This is the one that I was playing on guitar earlier, and you couldn't recognize it.
You'll have to play it again. I'll probably pick up on it better.
Okay.
God, this is a long record. Sometimes things become difficult to differentiate. God, I think it's so much like his vocal delivery is so pretty much uniform throughout the entire record, and then you're getting like these different styles of instrumentation. I think it was we'll get there, but like Life Like Weeds sounds like a Dance Gavin Dance song the way it opens up for me. And like the Metallica references that I was making earlier.
Yeah.
Like things become so muddy where it's really hard for my brain to like, oh yeah, this is this song. And then the tracks that are folky end up being, oh, this is the folky track. I don't know what it's called though. It's just really hard for me. And I mean, I imagine it's the same thing when I was first listening to Radiohead. It's like, this guy's wailing. I don't know what to make of it.
Or like, this element is too abrasive for me, or I get it.
I imagine they're a band that I'm going to like pick up on a lot though. I mean, going forward. I mean, it tends to be the case where like if something really challenges me at first, I end up being really into it 3 months later.
And I hope that happens.
JPEG was that way. Radiohead was that way.
Yeah.
Swans was not that way. I will say that.
I didn't think that they would be.
I love the lyrics though. Laugh hard. It's a long ways to the bank. Dude, that fucking destroyed my world a little bit today. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like, that fucked me up. I'm like, damn, you're right.
That's one of my favorite lines in the entire Modest Mouse discography.
That's a good one. Playing on the phrase, laughing all the way to the bank, meaning like it's easy. You laugh so hard that you couldn't believe it was so easy to be this financially successful. Like you have, it's like something that people that make their living as like financial advisors or like people that give advice for like a 6-step plan to make you a millionaire and it's going to take 30 years type of thing. Dave Ramsey type, like you're gonna laugh because it's so easy, but I'm gonna give you the secret right here. Like people make their careers on that shit, and then it's like he's taking the pessimist route where he's like, you better laugh hard because it's gonna take a long ass fucking time.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it appears. And I'm like, damn, he's fucking right. And I think a little bit of my optimism financially has slowed down due to the recent recession that we're approaching on economically here in the U.S. And that fucking spoke to me this week. I was like, God damn, he's right.
I think the song in general is also about how the way modern society is, where we all kind of are aware of what's going on with everybody and everything, where he says, everyone's a voyeurist. They're watching me, watch them, watch me right now. And that goes into like the whole paper thin walls where like there's not really a sense of privacy or anything. And I think the cynical nature of the track, it can be summed up by this line that I thought was really funny when I was younger, but now I get it a little bit more, where he says, it's been agreed the whole world stinks, so no one's taking showers anymore. He's saying right. That everything sucks and everybody sucks, so why should I be any different?
Correct.
And that's kind of like a plague that goes from person to person.
It's the pessimist mindset where, you know, it's something that I completely aware of and it resonates with me. I do take that route sometimes. Like sometimes I'll have conversations with, you know, my fiance where I'm just like, you know, there are bad people. And most of the time, the bad people win for some reason. And it's like, it just is, okay? And like, there's really nothing you can do about it. I'm like, the powers that be will work against you every time. And I'm like, I tell her all the time about politics. I'm like, I don't care because I've come to the conclusion that rules for thee, not for me. That's their mindset. It's like they will get richer, we will get poorer. And I'm like, I'm going to do my thing. And I'm not going to fight against that shit because it's a plague that eats your energy trying to fight against that system. And it's like, that is like the mindset of the world stinks, so why should I shower?
Nice guys finish last. Man.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think with me personally, I think you mentioned earlier about like people that have the most empathy have the hardest time in life. It's like I feel things so strongly and I care about things strongly. And there was a certain period of time where I did care about stuff like that, but I realized that it's all a bunch of bullshit and the things that I care about today are going to get eaten up by the news cycle and it'll be something next week and the week after that. And it's like, eventually you just got to say,
no more.
Why would I waste my life minutes on this shit. Like the only thing I'm ever going to vote for, and you know this, is like I'll vote for recreational marijuana in Ohio because I think it should be. Not that even that I want to smoke it all the time, but it's like, goddamn, it's a fucking, you could grow it. It's like a fucking tomato. Like it just, like, you know what I mean? Why care? And you can care about so much more things like people around you.
I haven't learned this lesson yet.
Really?
I still care too much, man. That's where we differ a little bit.
Oh, but, and I know that. Yeah. I mean, hanging around you long enough, like, I get it.
It hurts me, though.
Uh-huh. Fucking sucks.
Scrolling the news on Reddit is the most depressing thing, and I hate it.
It's a part of yourself that you have to kill because, unfortunately, being one, and it's such a negative point of view, you know, maybe my mind will change eventually. Like when I have kids or something, you know what I mean? Like I want to leave a world for them or whatever, like do my part. For me, as a young person, I feel like the world works against me. And for the most part, I have not felt like I have reaped many rewards for the effort that I have put in from my job, my education, just like generations ahead of me that like view our generations as like these pieces of shit, lazy people that don't know anything type of mentality.
Yeah.
You gotta have a college degree to do anything in this world for some reason, and it's almost
That's
financially unobtainable.
That still won't get you anywhere.
Correct. You'll just be in debt now. That's another lie they tell you. And it's like, I cannot, like, you know what I mean? It's like, why? Why would you try? Because someone's going to benefit from you taking on that debt. And you know who benefits from that? Like the banks, the government. And people will run on student loan forgiveness, or people will run on like making the middle class richer. Whether that happens or not, you don't know. And there's so much shit going on. And I hate to be a pessimist, but it's like, on the flip side of that, what I can do is do what I love to do, live the best I can for the people around me, you know, things like that, where I actually I get gratification and love from close relationships, doing things for people I care about. That's fulfilling.
This record is 22 years old. And you know how people say the phrase, it's more relevant than ever? That's not true in my opinion.
Correct.
It's because things haven't fucking changed.
Yep. I tell Elizabeth all the time, I go, babe, issues that are apparent now have been issues forever. And I said, there'll always be issues. I said, even if they get resolved, it'll be the next issue that hasn't been resolved. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, like, well, maybe like one big thing that's changed is like gay marriage. Like that happened in my lifetime. Like I was young.
Not for long.
Yeah,
homie.
correct. So it's like things like that where it's like just these, there's so many things working against us and like what we actually want. And what you, like, I think George Carlin was like a great comedian, like similar to Chappelle in a way that like really he was like speaking philosophy hidden within jokes where it was like, you know,
I love George Carlin.
He said, that infamous, it's like
the American Dream.
You gotta be asleep to believe it. And it's terrible to think like that, but you know, I think it's a great thing to have hope and like move against certain things. And for the most part, man, it's one big long day of suffering and you do it for a long time. But, you know, you got to fill your life with things that you love. And I think the combativeness of politics and like what religion's right and who's wrong, and, you know, my 401k hasn't grown or whatever. And when this president was in, it grew. And when this president was in, it shrank. Yeah, man, they're all working for themselves, and you're ammo in a war that they fight. That's all I got to say. Like the American people, you know, they're bullets in the magazine every 4 years, and whoever's got the most ammo wins, and it's just this constant bullshit, and I cannot stand it, and that's why I don't vote. We just went way too hard for some reason, but yeah.
I'm just trying to get through this week.
Correct.
Just trying to get through the day.
Bro, I'm just trying to go to the Renaissance Festival on Saturday. Like, I just want to work till then, okay?
Yeah. That was a great tangent, especially for this song that has like 5 bars of lyrics.
Sorry.
If I will leave any ending thoughts.
Why did we do that? That was like 10 minutes. Oh, my God.
I loved it. That's what I want. But if I'm going to leave this track on one last thought, I hate that the second verse is the same as the first. I hate this.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this group called Bright Eyes, and they often have 3 or 4 verses on their tracks where the choruses will have different lyrics, where like words are basically falling out of that guy. And on this record, we're repeating stuff too much. But it's a great tune. I think it's probably in the top 3 or 4 tracks on the record.
I need to calm down. I'm sorry.
I don't think that you do. I think you need to stay on this level.
I'm turning into Alex Jones over here. I can't stand myself. Okay. Whew. All right. I Came as a Rat. I don't like this track at all.
I don't know how I feel about this track, to be honest.
I would just say my biggest problem is that they do like the hey-o.
The military thing. Isn't that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about, yeah, well, I don't know what I've been told. You'll never die when you grow old, but hey, like that, like the, what's it called?
Oh, the,
what do you call it?
Oh, God damn it. I've never wanted to say this phrase ever again on the podcast, but it's the millennial whoop.
Yes, right? The millennial whoop. I cannot stand it. Like, it would, exactly. It would.
His vocals are bad.
Correct. It would work in another context, but his vocal delivery is not good. It's terrible. I cannot fucking stand that.
I don't mind it.
It doesn't get by in my books. I can't let it slide. I have to fucking point that shit out. But like there is like during like the outro to the track, there is like some crazy like choppy, like almost like electronic drums that like have like get muddled up, and I feel like it's a really poorly sampled drum loop or something, with like more UFO space sounds that come back through.
I wrote in my notes that it sounds like Adult Swim bumper music.
Yeah.
I also said, "What is this, JPEG Mafia?" Question mark.
It's so abrasive for some reason.
The guitar is ugly as hell on this track. I think there are some interesting sections where they do the reverse technique again, like they did on Gravity Rides Everything. I've always tried to figure out what the lyrical analysis of this track is. I came as a horror. I came as crap. I didn't know if it was like reincarnation type stuff. Lyrically, I think it's kind of on the short side.
Like, I don't understand a lot of the lyrics on this.
It takes a long time, but God dies too.
Yeah,
but
that's
not
what
before he'll stick it to you.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I was trying to think of what are these called? I came as gold. I came as crap. I came clean. I came as a rat. They're juxtaposed. They're opposites.
Is it just talking about like the potential of like being born on this earth, and you can like you have many ways, like many branching paths to take?
God, I'm struggling here. It's called. You said it earlier. It's when you say something and you act in a different way. Black and white. Forget it.
I think the verses of the song are slightly annoying, and the transition into these like weirdly slacker style chorus that it has is very strange. Outside of that, I don't think there's much more to say about this track.
No, let's not worry about it. I can't find that fucking word. For some reason, I wrote down in my notes for this track, sounds like System of a Down. And I don't know why I put that, but I think it's like the fact that the chord feels so circusy, like the chord progression feels so like warped and cynical.
We're on the track Lives, by the way, for anybody
Yep.
following along. System of a Down. I'm interested in that comparison.
I don't know why. Maybe I'm thinking of like Aerials or I don't know. It sounds so sinister.
It's got kind of a winding chord progression, where it doesn't feel like it has like an end to it.
Yeah,
and once it
like,
restarts, it's like it almost feels unfamiliar when it repeats back around.
Yeah, correct. Like I wrote down, song actually gets lighter, finishes off with a sinister sound, similar to the beginning. Like when you're having a dream and it feels like it's starting out as a good dream, and for some reason it turns into a nightmare. And
that might be helped by the fact that when it comes to the end of this chord progression, when it hits like this high note, there's an electric guitar that joins along, and they do this like bendy note where it's like it's a little disorienting in a way. I also find this track to be the most depressing, like lyrically on the record.
Everyone's afraid of their own life.
If you could be anything you wanted, I bet you'd be disappointed. Am I right?
I love that line, though. And I think it's really insightful because we've kind of talked about it. Like, I mean, nature of existence and your life compared to others. You know, the guy, like the CEO of Bed Bath & Beyond, like killed himself. And like the guy was probably wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. And for some reason, like it wasn't enough. And that's like something that we want, you know?
Actors and celebrities in general have depression and they find reasons to be unhappy.
Correct. like if you lived in a nice house, like sooner or later that nice house will lose its charm and it'll just be your house. You come home, you piss, you take a shit, you eat dinner, you watch TV or whatever your nightly activities are made up of. That would be very similar to what like a middle class or a lower income person, you know. I mean, it's all these like comparison games.
There's not a huge difference among us. We're all human beings at the end of the day.
For some reason, we think it's so crazy that our socioeconomic level is plays such a big role in our happiness. 9 times out of 10, it's not. Kanye had the line of money's not everything, but not having it is. And I think that's really important. Like if you're poor, you know, and you can't make ends meet, like that becomes the way you view the world. But once you have enough to get by, a lot of life becomes
trivial.
Correct. And this song's tying a lot into like, you know, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like you think having that lifestyle would be that much better for you, but you'd be very surprised that the problems that you have now will not change. Your mindset, you know, your position in your own head will probably be very similar. The situation that you'd be in will have its own set of problems that will arise, and you'll gripe and groan about those as well.
I have a hard time deciding how the line, no one really knows the ones they love. If you knew everything they thought, I bet you wish they'd just shut up. I'm wondering how that ties into that first little stanza that we just talked about. Like, is it saying, like, I would be annoyed by everybody else's thoughts, so they would be annoyed by my thoughts, so I won't say anything? There's some kind of, like, self-consciousness.
Listen, this might be a little too deep for the podcast, but I'll say it anyway.
I'm ready for it.
I think our relationships with people are pretty much this mindset. I love them so fucking much. They're the best. But they do this. And can you believe that they do this? And a lot of our like human interactions are that. Like for some reason we have like this dramatic, like gossipy side to a lot of our relationships. Like for example, like even with my fiance, like she's the best. I fucking love her. Like my life would be worse without her. You know, she's a better man because of her. I fucking love her. But it's like also, dude, can you believe that she fucking said this shit? This thought that I'm having about her is just as important for some reason, and it's on par with the, dude, she's the fucking best. You know what I mean? If it's like family members, it's like, oh, dude, they're the fucking best. Oh, the way they do this, I'm so proud of them. But it's like on the other side, it's like, hey, dude, like, you know, they don't call Mamaw. You know, they don't call Mamaw and talk to Mamaw.
You don't want to know them too well.
Correct.
You wouldn't want to share an apartment with everybody that you love.
Yep. And like this is kind of like a reductionist and a almost, it kind of can sound cynical, but like relationships are transactions in a lot of ways. Like for example, our friendship, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, dude, our friendship is based on the fact that we love certain things and we love coming together and talking about certain things. And that's what we're getting out of it.
That's how it is with a lot of my friendships.
Right.
I like having the same interests as other people.
But if we lived together, we'd fucking hate each other. You know what I mean?
We would be very different in that category.
And like, it's fun in small doses to have me around. But if I woke up and I'm cooking breakfast and I'm sitting there fucking cracking jokes at at 9:30 a.m., you'd be like, shut the fuck up. Please. Like, I just woke up. I want to put coffee on.
There's always going to be a clash.
Correct.
I wouldn't want to live with any of my friends.
Like
having dude roommates sounds terrible to me.
Awful. Like frat house vibes. Fuck that. I'd kill myself. Are you done in the bathroom, man? It's my time to jerk.
When you live with a spouse, at least there's like a yin to the yang. Like
Correct.
there's a difference. But yeah, I get it though. I don't take that the wrong way.
No,
I completely understand.
Yeah, you don't want to be around the people you love all the fucking time.
No, of course not.
Yeah, distance makes the heart grow fonder, and it's nice to hang out every couple of weeks.
The song also plays like it's kind of cut into pessimist and then optimistic, where like the song transitions into this kind of like folky, strummy acoustic section where they feel completely disconnected. I mean, there's like a fade in, like we're not even following the same rhythm as before, but like lyrically it is taking more of an optimistic viewpoint where it's saying like it's hard to remember that we're alive for the first time and the last time, like, hey man, like appreciate this shit. But then of course we're transitioning right from that back to how the song began. And I don't know how to take that really, like what the song's trying to say necessarily.
I kind of have like moments in life where I'll be in the car and I'm listening to a really good song and I'm jamming and I'm singing to it, and I'll have this moment, and it's typically at night, and I'll say, wow, man, it's so good to be alive and recognize that I'm enjoying myself in this moment. This is what life's about. I had this moment with, my fiance over the weekend. I kind of like had like a little bit of an out of body thing where I like stepped aside in my own head, and I'm like, I'm so thankful to be in this moment and recognize that I'm living. I'm thankful for this relationship and these things, and it's the best to be in this room with this human being and like knowing that we're sharing a similar experience for the most part. And then you have moments in your day where it's like that rant that we went on for some reason, where it's like, life is shit, fucking get over it. And it's just those things, similar to how I said earlier, I'm the coolest guy in the room or I'm an asshole, and both those things are true.
They can coexist.
Correct. And I think a lot of that is just coping mechanisms for a lot of us to just say, and like tie meaning and like help us get through the day. For the most part, life is a lot of like the stories that we tell ourselves and like the meanings that we attach to them. And that's perfectly fine because it makes this thing that we're doing very interesting and fun.
It's ever evolving.
And it keeps us going, and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong making your life a lot more than actually it's worth. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, you'll turn into a fucking neo-Marxist. Or like, I don't know. You'll turn into like a crazy pessimist. There's a good balance between like how much bullshit you tell yourself and being a piece of shit. You can do both things in life.
I mean, he does say my hell comes from inside myself.
Your brain never stops thinking for some reason, and for the most part, your suffering, a lot of it is inside your own head. And it's a lot of what ifs and what could be's, and very rarely the present moment of suffering.
I'd say so, yeah.
Let's move on. We got to finish this thing eventually.
Yeah, we're this is the home stretch. We're last two tracks. Life Like Weeds.
I really like this track.
I remember when I first bought this album and the continuing progression of me listening to it throughout my life. How would I say this? I never gave it a second thought. This was always a track I skipped over. I didn't care for it really. But over the last 2 weeks, I think I've realized this might be my favorite song on the album.
I really like this track.
Really like this one.
It's so catchy.
It is.
This is the song that reminds me of Dance Gavin Dance for some reason. The distortion guitar that opens up the track is so like bright for some reason. It like just reminds me of like post-hardcore for some reason.
It's bright and ugly. It's funny that you mentioned post-hardcore because their earlier records kind of do border on post-hardcore.
This song, God, I don't want to forget it. There are fucking strings on this record, and we haven't really talked about them. And this is one of those tracks that like they help stand out on.
I've meant to bring that in. I think on the cold part, there's some great violin and cellos that come in.
This is another one where it's like the violins like kind of help prop up the lyrics a little bit, where they're like in sync and they kind of float on each other. I didn't want to forget about that. God damn, I was completely forgot. I love classical instruments when they enter in.
So do I. And it's kind of a first time for this band, at least. I think I like this song mostly because of its instrumentation, where you're getting these kind of short bursts of energy before they just break out into these little guitar solos. And this is happening every 25 to 30 seconds, maybe less than that, actually. But it's great, expansive, spacey, jammy rock. It's what I like.
I think his vocal delivery like really works on this track for sure. That's fine. I want this compared to stuff that we weren't vibing with earlier, like the experimental shit. It's just, I can get behind it, but unfortunately, with a lot of things, it's like I want you to stick in your lane a little bit. It's okay to step out, but you better make damn sure it's executed well.
Yeah,
And that's where a lot of bands fall short. Is sometimes they'll try something and you're not completely sold on it because there's like an element that's not working. You want it to be perfect, and then you'll buy into it.
I think this is the last record where his vocal delivery is questionable because on the next one, his clean vocals, they're better sung, they're catchier. And then when he breaks out into like this kind of like screamy, like talk slam poetry shit, it's a lot heavier and harder. He's doing his best like like Tom Waits impression or like David Byrne from the Talking Heads. But I think he kind of showcases that here, where especially where we're breaking into these kind of louder, explosive moments, and then it cuts in with these spoken-ish words moments. He's screaming the words, "I could have told you all that I love you." And then it cuts in with like the slam poetry type shit where he says, "And in the faces you'll meet." It's a great like juxtaposition between these two vocal styles, and they're like just going in and out of each other.
I think this is easily like probably my favorite track. I think it's the most catchy.
I think it's my favorite track too. I want to bring attention to the line, "And in the faces you'll meet, you'll see the place where you'll die."
Yeah.
Do you know what this means?
No, please explain.
It's kind of saying like when you die, you'll live on in the memory of those next to you. You'll kind of like, you'll die with them instead of your own death.
God, stop. Don't do this to me right now.
That's a great fucking line. That is a great fucking line.
God damn it. Why'd you do this to me? Yeah, like...
because I knew it would do it to you.
Fuck. When I think about, people like dying... Like people I love around me that die. Sometimes I'll frame people I love and I'll think about them like when they die. I'll think about them in that way where I'll think about like, what would I have to say about them? And I think it kind of like brings light to what do I love so much about them that I'll miss so much when they're gone. Like that grieving process where they become more of like this, an idea or like a set of morals and like a system of the way they move through life. And I don't know, it's kind of weird. Yeah, it is true. Like when people die, you think of them in relation to what they provided to you and what insights they brought to the table. Like my great grandparents have died in the last few years, all of them. And I think like, oh, they were like my great grandparents. And like they weren't super impactful to me, in my life, but they were to somebody else. I have them in that concept in my mind where I'm thinking like they were a rock to my grandparents or to my parents, like they were their grandparents. And if I think about like if my parents died, like who would they have been to me or like my siblings or my friends or even my future wife? Like what are they bringing to the table that I'm so appreciative of and that I'll miss? And they become like this concept. And that's what it means when...
To live on.
Mm-hmm.
One of my biggest fears is not knowing the stories of people I love, like them passing before I have the chance to ask them questions about their life. Of course, that's like prevalent with like your parents or your grandparents, and like even more rarely with your great grandparents. And of course, that's like basically what you're saying as well.
Uh-huh.
But it's true, though. And he even says in the song, "I wish I could have told you all," where you want to live on. The idea of yourself, you want that to keep going. I think,
what legacy will you leave type of thing.
Yeah. I think that might be one of the most underrated Modest Mouse lyrics that there is. Like, it's one of the least quoted that I've seen. But on this recent 3-week excursion that we've had, it's one of the ones that's hit me the hardest. And the song has a killer chorus too. I mean, it's great. But yes, we can move on to.
Dude, why at the beginning of this track you get like I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they're like, "What's up? Make love." Like, was this recorded at a concert? Like, what's going on?
I don't know. I have no idea what the context is. When I listened to this record, I thought of you on this final track because they're doing the thing that we hate, and I think you know what I'm saying. They're ending the record off on a weird note.
I hate the outros. Why is it every time we do an album, we're like, bro, the outro doesn't make sense in the context of the record, man?
Name one record that we've done in the history of this podcast that ends off on a good note.
Prior to coming to the podcast, I had this thought, and I was thinking, what records do I view that have great outros? And I'm thinking to myself, like, it's not records that we've done for the podcast. It's like, when I think of a great outro that, like, I can get addicted to in a way that I feel like ties up a record well is, like, Last Call for, fucking Christ.
College Dropout.
Yep, thank you. I almost said Graduation. That wasn't right. Forest Hills Drive, the outro for that record, what's it called?
Note to Self?
Note to Self. That's one where I'm like, perfect. Did a great job. Because it acts, those tracks act as the credits. The credits roll.
Yeah.
And they work perfectly because they're completely aware of the fact that this is an album, it's a listening experience, and this is the end, thank you type of thing. And all of the albums that we've done, I'm like, stop. You're doing it bad.
I think that Life Like Weeds would have been the perfect ending to this record.
Mm-hmm.
Even looking as far back as records like Discovery by Daft Punk, where the outro to that album is unsatisfactory. Deftones, Koi no Yokan, even the Swans record, which of course is weird as fuck, but the last track, it doesn't work. Frank Ocean.
Nope.
There's one though. I think the last track on Transatlanticism is actually a good closing track, but it wasn't the right closing track for that record. Where like the title track would have been the best, or like Passenger Seat or something like that. Every record that we've done, man,
It's kind of iffy.
Ooh, we've done Kid A, motion picture soundtrack.
Yep.
That's actually a good closer.
That works. You're right.
But batting average for this podcast, it's low. Closing tracks are usually not great. This song feels like a fuck you. Like, in the most DIY indie band, flipping their middle finger out the car window as they drive away. Like,
I get really frustrated by that because you have to be aware as an artist that if you're going to create an experience, you might as well give as much energy into closing a record as you did beginning it, or like hitting your high points. And when it doesn't happen, I get fucking pissed. And that's all I really have to say, and it's fine. It's like my biggest gripe with album listenings. It's like I want to be wooed at the very end. Like, leave me off thinking, goddamn. Because at the end of this song, and if you repeat the record, if you have your phone on repeat, it's like, I forgot that the album ended, and I'm already on the third track. It's like, it gets so frustrating. I want to feel like we've started and ended somewhere.
When you end this track and it goes back to Third Planet, which is like streaming devices usually will do, it's like so tonally, like it's like whiplash almost. And of course this track, it's produced more badly than most tracks on the record. I wanted to say it sounds like a track from their last record, but it actually sounds like a C side instead of a B side. Like it sounds like the bottom of the barrel shit. I do think that the final line of the track sums up the record well, where this album has been philosophically pondering like religion and death and existentialism. And then he ends it off with the line, "And the one thing you taught me about human beings was this: they ain't made of nothing but water and shit." It's kind of like, yeah, we're like just like these sacks of fluid like floating on this planet. Like, don't think too deep about it.
Correct.
And I kind of like that, but the song's not good.
Speaking of summing up, let's do that. I'll go first because I think I'd rather get my opinion out before you. I don't want you to influence it. But
okay.
I think for me, the album was really interesting. And I think for the most part, the things that fell really short for me. And the things that were really fun were fun. But I don't think there was ever really a moment on the record where I'm like, hey man, this shit is really unique. Or this shit is I don't want to return to this in a way that's gonna stick with me in my music library. So
there's many songs that you wouldn't return to outside of the context of the record.
Yeah. And that's fine. And I think maybe like this album specifically might be different for the band in general. You know, I don't have that discography knowledge, so you know that might be something to consider. But I will say the thing that I love the most was the fact that the lyricism really brought out a lot of emotional energy for me, where I couldn't help but think about it. I mean, I cannot tell. Like, there's probably 40 minutes of me ranting on this fucking record for some reason. And I think that plays a big role, and that's something that I love when it comes to music, and it's something I cherish and I look for in all of my listening shenanigans that I go through on a day-to-day. So with that being said, I think an appropriate score would probably be a 7 out of 10. I think that's fair for maybe like really getting a proper introduction to the band. You know, maybe my opinion would change if I have more knowledge later on, but I think the lyricism really kind of helps save the record for me in a big way. So 7 out of 10, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, I'm totally fine with that. It's actually more positive than I thought it would be.
Okay.
I kind of made the mistake of recommending their weirdest record, at least like instrumentally, but I think, God, I'm going to sound so like my thoughts aren't fluid here. We're also at the end of 4-5 beers at this point. You asked me earlier how I like rank the discography, and I think this discussion actually has helped me put things into perspective a little bit. I think this might be like their second or third best record, maybe their third. Good News has the better standout tracks. The Lonesome Crowded West is probably their best overall, like, even experience. This is probably their most cohesive record, but I think in their attempt to try to make a cohesive record, it ends up sagging in sections. There's peaks and valleys. There's a couple standouts and some stuff that kind of just falls to the wayside. So, coming from like a Modest Mouse mega fan, I'm going to give it like a strong 8 to an 8.5.
Okay.
I would recommend you check out their other stuff eventually.
Yeah, I'd be interested in Lonesome West. I'd be interested in that. I've heard good things about that during my research and shit.
That's usually considered the favorite among most people. I think it might be my favorite. If you're looking for like great lyricism, it's spread out all across the first 4 records. If you want this trailer park philosophy shit, that's kind of what they're great at.
Okay.
Until they're not.
I'm going to shoehorn in my recommendation real fast just to kind of let's get it over with.
I'm ready for the white boy spiel.
I've wanted to have fun for a while, and I feel like for the most part we have kind of done a lot of like existential and like insights on humanity and, you know, the wisdoms of a couple of young white dudes and references to like really art house shit. And I want to have some fun. And it's, man, I was thinking about Terminator so much. And I'm like, man, I want to come back to some fucking good old fashioned fun. Blockbuster, like 80s bullshit.
Okay.
And I want to do exactly that. I want to do RoboCop. Exactly.
Yes.
And I want to have some fucking fun. I told you I was like kind of on the fence about it with my recommendation the other day, and I said I didn't know if I was going to do this, but coincidence kind of like leaned me into that. And the Framed the other day, like maybe like 4 or 5, 6 days ago, was RoboCop, and I was like, it's the sign. It's time to have some fun. I cannot wait to talk about it. It's been a while since I've seen it. I watched it when I was young, and I shouldn't have, being that it's so fucking violent for when I had saw it. Oh my god, I'm ready to get drunk and talk about squibs. Like, I'm ready to talk about fucking blood all over the place and good old fashioned stop motion animation in the middle of a live action film. And that's gonna be a fucking good time.
Dude, you are preaching to the choir. I want 80s action schlock.
Yeah, dude.
Dumb, stupid violence, explosions, limbs severed. The only scene that I'm aware of in this movie is...
the conference room, maybe?
Not quite. It's a man getting his dick shot off.
Yeah, it's similar.
You know that I'm a big fan of Red Letter Media, and they talk highly about this movie all the time because they love B-movie campiness. And I know nothing about the plot.
Good.
I don't know any of the actors in the movie.
It's going to be a fucking good time. For the most part, I think we'll just be back to the beginnings. Talk about dumb shit. I imagine it'll probably go shorter than expected, and I don't know. I'm hyped. I want to do something more approachable.
There's nothing wrong with doing something simple. We're kind of going for full circle, like you said. It's the 2-year anniversary of the podcast.
God. You're right.
Also, it's good that you did this because my next recommendation is going to be fucking weird as hell. So
need a little bit of a breather in between. All right, works for me. That's all I got to say. I had a lot of fun. But until next time, Getter, if you could do me the honors.
Adios.